Hello and welcome to the second episode of The Neutral Zone, where some of your favorite YouTube channels and also Spacedock come together to just chill, send out some positive waves, and rap about a little thing I like to call life. Today we are discussing Battlestar Galactica and how great it is. I am Marc from the Templin Institute, and I am joined by, from the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, the Duke of Space, the Right Honourable Daniel from Spacedock. How's it going?
It's going very well, thank you.
You always sound not too into it. I do these big intros, and you're always just really kind of, it's fine.
It's hard to live up to the build-up you give.
Damn straight. And also, from the United States of America, the king, and this time also queen of Star Wars YouTube channels, the explainer of all things, but Star Wars in particular, people who run a way more popular Instagram account than mine, Alex and Mollie from Star Wars Explained. How's it going?
Good. Mollie does the Instagram account.
Great, thanks. Yeah,
How many followers do you got?
we just hit 25,000.
We did? Wow.
So
Yeah.
So more than my 30 is what you're saying.
Yeah, but I can help you out with that.
Excellent.
We'll talk.
fine.
I didn't even know that. Wow. Look.
All right. And finally, from the wild coasts of British Columbia, my business friend, the voice of the Institute, Larissa. How's it going?
Oh, it's going great, Mark. I never get tired of hearing my intro.
Oh, that's good. I mean, thank you. It's nice to get the intro praised like that. Yeah. Alrighty, so as we move into this discussion on Battlestar Galactica, the main criticism from our last episode was that it was too perfect. Things were running too smoothly. So I figured this time we'll just make things a bit more casual, and I'd like to ask each of you what it is about BSG that you find so appealing. And I'll start with the Star Wars Explains.
I really, really love the characters. That's probably my favorite aspect of Battlestar. There's a lot to love about it, and I'm sure Daniel's going to take over all of the space flight dynamics and physics of it all, but I just am in it for the characters. I think that they have some of the most interesting arcs in television.
And yeah, I have to agree. The characters really made the show great to me, especially the female characters. I feel like was one of the first sci-fi shows to really give female characters a voice of their own. They weren't constantly being set up to just exist to react to their male leads.
Yeah, we were literally just watching the first episode of the miniseries, and I was sitting there thinking, like, Rosalind's kind of like the first Admiral Holdo. Like, people are immediately like, why is this woman in charge? And then she's just taken charge. She deserves it. It's great.
And of course, the gender swap on Starbuck, right? I mean, that was was that a big deal at the time? Does anyone actually remember if people complained about it then?
It was a big deal for TOS fans.
It must have been a huge, huge deal.
It didn't matter to us because we never saw the OG series, but I do remember some complaints about it.
Great decision, though. Katie Sackhoff, perfect. Couldn't possibly have been anybody else.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic performance.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those changes that just makes perfect sense as soon as you see how she plays it.
Yeah.
She's awesome.
Mm-hmm. And
Really
I
is.
love her relationship with Rosalind too.
So, I guess character-wise, the obvious question I'll ask is, who really stood out to you? Who kind of exemplified, the writing in its best form? I mean, obviously every character in Battlestar is awesome, but who's at the top of the hill for you?
My favorite is Gata.
I go back and forth between Baltar and Starbuck.
Gator is a really cool choice. That guy had a hell of an arc. He really
I
did.
love Gata so much.
Yeah. It's such
And I guess I should just bring up here, we're going to go full into spoilers here, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, for sure. If you haven't watched the full show yet, go watch the full show and then
Yeah.
come back. Don't kid yourself.
Also, why?
Yeah, it's been
haven't you
done
watched
for
the
a
full show?
while now.
Well, Gata specifically, I like how you bring him up because his arc, as I said, is crazy. You have an idea of what type of character that is, but over the course of the series, he goes in directions that you could never have expected, right?
Yeah. I mean, at the start of the series, he's basically Sulu. He just, tells people that the ship's going forward. That's, his whole job. And he goes from, and everything that happens to him is completely understandable, and he remains totally sympathetic, even as he ultimately becomes an antagonist and stuff. The poor guy just gets completely ruined by the events around him, and it's all Anders' fault, the idiot. But yeah, that guy had a hard time, and it's
Yeah,
great watching it happen.
it really underlined like just how wearing and traumatic the flight across the galaxy is, and what a heavy toll that takes on the people.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, one thing I really appreciated about Battlestar was it wasn't afraid to take its time. Like, I feel like a lot of even modern TV shows, they're trying to cram so much into seasons so they can get those big moments, right? Whereas Battlestar, like, things were slow, but they built up and they made sense, which is the most important part. Like, nothing that ever happened seemed to come out of the blue.
Yeah,
that's
everything
true.
was already built on and developed. Like, it was very clear that Ronald Moore and David Icke knew exactly what they wanted the show to be.
Well, famously, they refused to do more, didn't they? After the Sci-Fi Channel wanted more because it was the biggest hit they'd had in ever, and it still is, I think. But it was it's a four season story. It was always supposed to be a 4-season story, and that's how much we're doing. Which is like, you got to respect that, really.
Yeah, the restraint and really understanding where your story ends. It's a valuable trait, and I don't think enough television in general appreciates that quality.
Well, yeah, restraint. You don't see a lot of that nowadays, right?
I think ever in human history, let's be real.
Okay,
Had
fair
a
enough.
couple of spin-offs. They had, what was it, Caprica?
Yeah, in the web
Blood and
series,
Blood
yeah.
and Chrome, yeah.
I feel like if they'd done Blood and Chrome first, it would have done really well. But they'd like Caprica was a bit of a failure.
Yeah.
And they kind of put everybody off. And then when they tried to do Blood and Chrome, there weren't really anybody left to really get it moving, which is a shame because
Well,
the miniseries they did for that was all right.
I feel like if we're discussing why Battlestar Galactica is one of like the greatest shows of all time, we want to stay far away from Caprica.
That's a good
and to
point,
lesser
yeah.
extent, Blood and Chrome.
I didn't hate Caprica. We gave it a shot. It was just it was different. It was exploring different things, but
Yeah.
It just wasn't Battlestar, so it's
yeah,
like, nope.
yeah.
I can understand why they, like, from like a point of view of them writing their own universe, they might want to explore that, but like it feels like kind of a misunderstanding of what people wanted out of Battlestar. Like, if you just told somebody in pure form, like, well, we're going to make a series about when like Adama's dad was a lawyer, and it's all like weird steampunk zeppelins and stuff. It doesn't really hold up to what they had already set up.
Well, if I can steer us back towards the characters here.
Go for it.
I guess one thing that I really appreciate about Battlestar is I guess there's a lot of shows that take place like on a spaceship where you have, the captain and, all the officers and that whole dynamic. Like Star Trek obviously comes to mind, right? But what I really liked about Battlestar was like characters had, I don't know, they had influence around them. Like you could feel like Adama's kind of commanding presence throughout the rest of the ship, right? Like, whereas to bring up Star Trek Discovery, you have the captain who seems completely at odds with the rest of the ship, and nothing he does seems to influence the crew at all. So, I mean, there's that great episode where Adama's like doing boxing or something.
Yeah.
The boxing episode. Like, I really like that because it just shows that his influence changed over the course of the series, and he had to kind of rein it back in. And you felt that too. It didn't seem arbitrary or out of the blue.
Since nobody asked, my favorite character is actually Roslyn, because she takes like this really, like, actually Roslyn and Zarek, like those two, just so good, especially in the later seasons when they start losing control and they're on New Caprica. Get some really juicy stuff there.
Oh, I really like the.
Big time.
I think there's this scene where they're both getting like taken off in a truck to be executed, and Roslyn meets up with Zarek again after like 2 years or whatever, and there's just like they're basically just laughing at the situation, like all this animosity between them for years just doesn't matter at that point. That's a great scene.
He almost got
like
cool. He got so close.
Yeah.
I was like, they're gonna bring him back and we're gonna like him, and then he just threw it all away.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel like you could say that about almost every character. They have
that's
these
true.
like great arcs, and the relationships with other characters change. Like at the start of the series, well, actually, my favorite example of this is Saul, right? Because he starts off as this kind of like drunk guy, and his only redeeming quality is that he's super loyal to Adama, and he loses even that. And it takes forever for him to get back to, I don't know, a semblance of improvement.
Yeah, the show really liked to have characters look like they'd sort of gone through an arc and then just completely pull the rug out from under you. Like the whole thing with Duala in season 4, where she has like 10 straight episodes of like psychological recovery from stuff that's happened, and it seems like she's kind of got it together, and then they just killed her off. That was
I love that you bring that up, because her death, Duala's death, was actually one of my favorite moments, because I feel like when you're trying to show how stressful the whole situation is, to have one of your main characters just kill themselves out of almost, not out of nowhere, but just unexpectedly, was super daring and brave.
Yeah, the show's got one of the best, like, real-world, proven psychological principles of the characters of any other sci-fi show.
Absolutely, yeah.
Can you expand on that?
I mean, just like you said, like, the showing, like, real-world examples of how people deal with stress and crisis. Like, for example, the first episode after the miniseries, 33, a lot of people that were in the military said that that was one of the greatest episodes because it shows just how stressful things can be in a crisis mode.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I remember at DragonCon we were listening to one of the panels and they were talking about that episode and how in every episode Edward James almost wanted it to be more intense than it really was. Like, so he was not sleeping to, like, get into character, and then other people were like, well, we got to keep up with Eddie, so they weren't sleeping. But then they had, like, psychological experts on the set, and so that they would act the right way. And almost was like, so after a certain time, people would be, like, killing themselves, right? There'd be dead bodies everywhere, and they were like, oh no, you'd probably just, like, pass out and go to sleep. I don't think anyone's ever committed suicide over a lack of sleep. And he's like, meh. Like,
No, in the first episode, at least.
It's like everything they did, Edward James almost wanted it to be worse. Like, drop bodies left and right.
I love the there's so many great stories about his, like, insane ad-libbing and like massive dedication to the role, because he famously smashed up a model ship that turned out to be like massively valuable and taken from some museum on loan or whatever, because it just came out of nowhere and decided to smash this model to pieces.
Oh yeah, the one that he's
I
been
feel
working
like,
on for the entire show, basically.
Yeah.
I feel like we're veering towards the writing of the show, which I think is actually, Larissa, that's one of your favorite kind of elements of Battlestar, right?
Yeah, the expert crafting of the writing was just absolutely incredible, especially given that BSG in season 4 got hit, pretty, I'm not going to say hard, but they got hit by the writer's strike of 2008-2009. But according to what I've heard, like, the showrunners, Moore and Ike, had gone on, like, this huge retreat with the writing staff in between seasons 3 and 4. They planned out the whole arc of the show. They had everything planned, but it was originally only ordered like a 13-episode run or something. But then they had to, like, fill out the remaining, like, 11 episodes or whatever it was. And like, that's kind of where season 4 got a little bit messy, but I kind of going back to 33, because that's really the fun part. It's like, that is the best episode of television I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, it's great.
It was,
it really
like,
is.
expertly paced. It was gorgeously, like, well integrated with everything, incredibly realistic, and, like, I cry every time I watch it. It's just so emotionally charged.
Did the show ever reach that height again? Because a lot of people are kind of iffy on season 4. Do you think there was consistent quality throughout all of it?
Consistent quality? No, it's impossible for there to be consistent quality through any kind
of
of show.
Relatively consistent quality. Like, do you think there was, like, a clear peak and a clear kind of fall, or was it more or less steady the entire time?
I haven't actually watched the 4th season in a few years now, so I wouldn't be able to say, but
Fraud!
Hey, back off. I am in the middle of a rewatch, so just wait, okay?
I think it was pretty steady.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think the sort of twin apexes of the show are the Pegasus arrival and New Caprica. They're your two big, like, 3-part arcs that are, like, really fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the whole Adama versus Kane situation was really, really great.
I also really, really liked how they handled the whole, like, transition between Baltar first coming into office and then them living on New Caprica for a year. It was really jarring to just all of a sudden, we're forward a year, and this is life now.
Also, Kara's back.
The what?
Yeah.
Back. Oh, I said also Kara's back from the dead.
Oh yeah, I would love, the end of season 3 was an apex for me. and the mutiny I would add to that list.
Oh.
I feel like each season has just some huge highs. And it's a weird show for me, honestly, because there are some episodes that I'm like, I hate these episodes. But I also really don't like Scar. And fortunately, they come like right after each other, so it's like, okay, we just skip that little bit. But each season has such amazing episodes that I don't even care about the bad ones, and like it's still my favorite show. I don't think I have another show where I'm just like, God, I hate those episodes, but the rest of it's so good it doesn't matter.
The thing is,
Black Market's kind of the standout episode that everyone hates, right?
It's terrible.
I think I only saw it once, and then I read that people hated it, so I never bothered again. What was it about that episode that just didn't jibe with the rest of the series?
The main problem with it really is it was, I think, like somebody basically decided that they didn't want to do a lot of stuff that was set up in the Resurrection Ship two-parter, especially with what's his name, Fisk, the Kane's XO. Like Resurrection Ship heavily sets him up to be the sort of sympathetic bridge to the Pegasus crew, and like it builds his relationship with Ty and sort of sets him up to kind of come into his own after Kane's gone. And Black Market seems to be this like weird backwards engineered retcon machine to try and get rid of him and do that in a way that makes sense without involving the Cylons, and like attach this weird egregious backstory thing to Lee. And it's very odd. It's like an episode of a different show.
Yeah, he becomes like this
strange.
private investigator, and it just it's really weird.
To mention Scar though, I don't hate Scar, but one thing that really does sort of like they have those episodes in a row, and Black Market's in there, and one thing that makes that kind of period a little bit difficult to get through is the fact that Battlestar Galactica really loves to do the whole in medias res thing, where it like plays like a bit of the end at the beginning of the episode and then keeps flashing back to it.
Yeah,
and that's kind of fun for one episode, but when you do it like 4 episodes consecutively, it's just like really irritating.
Yeah.
Stop.
See, the thing with that though is they could kind of get away with it because this was before binge watching was really a thing. Because it was still like regular television, so they still wrote with regular television in mind. So I'm willing to look past that because it's a product of its time.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to bring that up, because have you ever read the original series Bible that Ronald D. Moore wrote?
No, I've not managed to find it.
I did a while ago.
Very hard.
It's amazing, because when did this come out? 2004?
Yeah.
It's written like he's writing what television is going to be like in 2018 here. I think his main point was that he wanted to do a 3-story structure to be the overarching story over the entire series, which would be the plot to find Earth. There'd be smaller kind of subplots that would last maybe from just a couple episodes to an entire season, and then it'd be like the smallest of the stories, which happen over the course of an episode. And I mean that's just television now. So I mean I think Battlestar holds up like super well.
Yeah.
Oh, it does.
I mean, really, this was like discounting Babylon 5. This is pretty much, it's like the second show in the sci-fi genre to completely commit itself to the syndicated storytelling. If you've missed an episode, well, I'm sorry, that's your fault kind of thing. Like they totally jump straight past problem of the week really with Battlestar Galactica, and it's a great choice really. It's 1,000 times more involved as a result.
Yeah.
So I mean we've seen like a ton of shows try to copy Battlestar Galactica. We had Stargate Universe. I think that's like the major one that tried to copy the tone.
One, yeah. That's a
but it
fantastic
seems
show,
like
but it shouldn't have done what it did. Like, if it hadn't been Stargate, it would have been brilliant, but I'm not surprised in the least that Stargate fans didn't like it, because you can't just jackknife the tone of your entire IP into like Battlestar Galactica tone because it's doing well on the other channel. Like, it doesn't work that way. But it was a good show in of itself.
Well, I think there's like plenty of examples nowadays of shows that are trying to copy Battlestar without understanding why it worked. So like, what do you think is the main lesson TV shows should learn from Battlestar?
Not to treat your audience like an idiot.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's all about
audience is
consequence.
so much smarter than they're willing to give them credit for, and I think that's what Battlestar really succeeded at. Was it had real adult conversations about these real adult issues, and it didn't make a moral stance on them. It just said, okay, this is the state of things. What do we do?
Was there a moment in particular that kind of jumped out at you that like represented that pretty well?
I would say everything on New Caprica, especially with the whole suicide bombing thing that Saltai was talking about. Like, they firmly planted the humans on the side that you could roughly equate to Al-Qaeda, and the Cylons on the side of America, and looked at that and say, look at your fellow man and tell me that they're not human because they're doing these atrocious acts. They are. They're acting from a human place. Forgive them.
I remember that made big waves at the time because there was that whole scene where there's the rows and columns of Cylons marching down that street, and it was almost taken from the newspapers at that point.
Yeah, the show kind of started out as like, okay, this is an obvious good versus evil story, and then eventually kind of morphed into kind of like a moral ambiguity in like post 9/11 America.
Yeah,
like by the end of the show, like there's no black and white characters. Like everyone's just this horrible mess of gray.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when they got into the New Caprica stuff, and it's like you start almost cheering for the resistance, and then they're like doing suicide bombs, and you're kind of like for it, and then you're like, oh, hang on a second, like what am I rooting for?
To think of another example like that, I think it's in season 4. There's the situation where they find Cylons who have a plague that gets transmitted through the resurrection ship when they die, and they basically, like, everyone unilaterally decides, okay, then we're just going to kill all these people and transmit the virus to the Cylons, and it's like only Hilo who says, are we really going to like commit genocide here? And it's super interesting to see everyone, like every single sympathetic character is completely behind the kill them all idea apart from Hilo. And you've been following these people for 4 years, and I feel like most of the audience even is at this point thinking, "Oh, shut up, Hilo! Let's just do this."
I for sure was. I was like, Hilo, this will solve everything.
Yeah.
So no one here was on Hilo's side?
I was on Hilo's side.
I mean, like,
I didn't want the show to end, so.
In actual philosophy, I'm on Hilo's side, but like when you're a step out of it and it's not real, you're just like, yeah, solve your problems. Who cares?
I think if I'd been there, I'd probably have been telling Hilo to shut up after 4 years
Right.
of that.
Well, I kind of like,
but
that's
it's
part of the
really
reason I
makes
love
sense.
Gata, I think, is that we needed a character that when all of a sudden we're like, okay, we're cool with these Cylons now, we're going to work together. Like, someone had to be like, really? Are we really doing this after all this time? And yeah, you see where he's coming from.
I also feel like having characters you care about making the wrong choice gives those choices greater weight. Because like in Star Trek, they have these same type of arguments. Like I think there was one where they wanted to deliver a virus to the Borg, right? Except everyone's perfect, so there's really like the arguments don't really seem that genuine.
Yeah.
But in Battlestar, like you really feel it.
Yeah,
People
it was,
mess up all the time in Battlestar.
Was the Hugh episode, I Hugh or something, the TNG episode? Because
something like
the
that.
sole purpose of that Admiral Nechayev was to be the only person in the Federation who is not perfect, so that Picard can give a speech. There needs to be one person who wants to do something dodgy, so that Picard can give a speech about it.
Yeah. Like Star Trek is always bringing in people to fill in the role of the antagonist, whereas in Battlestar they could just they used characters you already knew.
Yeah.
Yeah, it made them very, very dynamic and interesting.
Yeah, and darker. I think that's like the buzzword everyone loves nowadays, but this earned it, I think.
Yeah.
It's always totally
Yeah.
understandable as well, because Gata is like a victim of his own optimism throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like he's the one person who wants to actually try and do the sort of Cylon hybrid settlement on New Caprica where everybody's going to live happily together. And even the Cylons don't think that's possible, and he's like completely absorbed in this optimism, and it just leaves him so much worse off than everybody else. It's just depressing. But that's the show for you.
That is one thing that I wish that wound up in the actual series, is that Gata like web series where you really get all that about him
Oh yeah.
wanting the Cylons to work out, and he's like working with an 8 to help quote unquote keep the resistance safe, and she's actually killing them all. And I wish that were in the series, because that informs his decisions a little bit more, but I'm fine. It worked either way.
They did another miniseries, another web series, didn't they? Where he was trapped on a raptor with racetrack. Or something.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And it kept flashing back to New Caprica.
Oh, that was it. Sorry, I'm confusing it with the Resistance miniseries they did. Yeah, that was really good. That.
Can I tell you my favorite Gata moment?
Please.
It's small, but it's good. I think it was in the miniseries. It's the very first time they jump the Battlestar Galactica, and I think it's like the first time in a bunch of years that they've actually been able to do it. Like they weren't sure if it even worked. And Gata ends up like shaking hands with some like extra,
Yeah.
and like I love that moment because he seems like just like a normal person, not like a character on a TV show. I like it when there's little moments like that make these people come alive.
Yeah,
I do like that they celebrated that jump too. Like it was a big deal, and now it's like after that, it's every day we jump 5 times. Who cares?
yeah.
Yeah, there are no more handshakes after that one.
I mean, literally the next episode, we start off on 33, and it's Adama saying, "Oh, what's this? Jump 270 or something."
Yeah.
All the magic of the jump is gone.
I do want to think that Gata shook hands with that guy every time until he was like, "Gata, stop it."
I thought he was a good singer.
He was.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Gator's Lament.
Sang a little tune.
I've completely forgotten about that. Gata sang in an episode.
Yeah.
After
That was towards the
after
end.
Bloody Anders gets his leg blown off and he ends up hospitalized for like 10 episodes.
Let's just title this episode like the Gata appreciation video.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess
That would
right?
be
But
your video, Alex.
Sandra Giuliani, love us.
that's actually the best transition I can think of to start talking about the other music in the show, which everyone seems to love. So, Mr. Doc, I don't know. Are you a fan? You got to be a fan of the music in this show, right?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I think, as far as I'm concerned, this is probably the best science fiction soundtrack ever composed. It's perfect. It's fantastic. It meshes with the story so well, and it's like I've never seen music like convey the emotion the scene is trying to convey so flawlessly. I mean, like I know, like it's common saying that the music is the wings of the story, and that is so perfectly captured in Battlestar Galactica, especially with the Adama family theme and the bagpipes and all that.
Yep.
And it's just like every moment is just dialed up to 1,000 every time they apply the Bear McCreary score. The guy really is a genius.
Yeah, Bear McCreary is bad.
Yeah, you
Bay
get to a
McCreary.
point in the series where you start to hear that music and you just get goosebumps, and or you just start crying for no reason.
Absolutely.
I know how to play one song by memory on piano, and it's "The Shape of Things to Come" because I
that's so
love
good.
that song.
Yeah.
It's so good. That whole sequence where they play that, where it's like 3 different sequences of scenes happening at the same time. They have the briefing on the Pegasus, and Tyrrell's gonna in his trance and beats up Kelly.
Yeah.
And it's all just played against that same track, and it's all muted, and it's perfect. That show knows how to use music.
So, Larissa, I always enjoy asking you about the production elements in these things since you're involved in the industry. So, I want to get your take on the look and feel of Battlestar Galactica and like how the camera affects the story. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts, I mean, the whole influence of like reality television and documentaries is not lost on anybody. I think anybody who's ever watched television can understand that. But there's more subtle things as well that I really appreciated, especially now that I've gotten more involved in like how lighting works. But all of the lighting, especially on board ship, has this really harsh quality to it, and it's kind of blown out a little bit. And it's really gross, and I love it because that's what being on ship would be like, a little bit gross.
Yeah, it looks lived in.
Yeah, and it's like the set design is absolutely amazing, of course. Just all of the pieces came together so cohesively. And I think the production design and the quality of the camera work and the editing just really pulled all these pieces together to just elevate the writing and the acting on the show. And I don't think the show would have been anywhere near as successful if it weren't for those elements as well.
Well, I mean, Star Trek Enterprise is the closest comparison I can think of because I think they were on more or less around the same time. Like,
Yeah,
I think
they were.
Enterprise was a bit earlier. Yeah, whereas Enterprise, like, not to insult Enterprise too much, but the sets look like sets. Like, it looks like a Star Trek theme park whenever they're on the bridge. Yeah, I mean, I guess the closest comparison to Battlestar maybe be Firefly because they did that same thing with the lived-in quality and everything.
Used universe.
And I like how everything is like they're using real paper, even though they got the corners cut off, which bugs me. But they use real paper. They have real screens. There's no touch screens. There's nothing fancy going on. It's just it all feels
it's
very real.
That grounded realism, and you can see the effect that has had on other shows as well. Like Falling Skies was a show that I gave an honest try because I'm pretty sure a lot of the production team was involved in the same show because they both shot in Vancouver rather. And Falling Skies does have a very similar aesthetic in terms of the production design. It's very grounded. It's very dirty. But I don't know. I didn't like Falling Skies that much.
What was it that lost you on Falling Skies? If you had to name it, put you on the spot.
I didn't connect to any of the characters. Like, it wasn't that they were bad or I hated them. I just didn't resonate, so I kind of gave up.
That was the TNT show, right? I think we watched one season of that. Maybe we started the second, and then I think we just forgot it existed.
We're really good at starting and quitting shows very quickly. Because they're not Battlestar.
The only thing I know about Fallen Skies is that it had the guy that played Daniel Jackson in Stargate in it. That's as far as I go.
So, is anyone... I know Spacedock, I'm sure you're very eager to talk about spaceships and the physics of all this stuff. Does anyone have anything else to say before we move on to that?
Just to keep it on characters for one more second, I think that we should talk about... What's everyone's favorite Cylon reveal?
Ooh.
Because that's like the mystery that keeps the show going, kind of. That you're always wondering who's a Cylon, who's it going to be. So
well, Alex, you start us off here. Who is your favorite reveal?
Oh well,
honestly,
I feel like we're all going to have a lot of the same ones. But go ahead, Larissa.
Mine is probably not the ones that everybody else is thinking, but mine's Boomer.
Okay,
it's like right off the bat, but it was a really well done reveal.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I've just realised what you mean there with the miniseries reveal. Yeah, that was good.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was important early on to be like, boom, like someone that you trust already is someone bad. But I think easily the why all along the Watchtower. I couldn't think of the name the name of the song, but yeah, the end of season 3. I remember standing up out of my chair and being like, what the hell? Like, how did I not see this coming?
So is it Colonel Ty for you?
I think Chief was the one that I kept going, no! Like, I
that's
couldn't
my
believe it.
second most surprised one, but I think, Colonel Ty was it for me.
Well, yeah, Ty was like, he's so old, you'd think there's no way. But Chief was like, he's the everyman, like, he can't be a Cylon. And just...
Yeah, he's your uncle that you have beers with. How could he be a Cylon?
Right.
I just love Ty's slow descent into insanity, where he thinks I mean, they all keep hearing that song, and then he's like, "It's in the fracking ship."
Someone turn off that fracking music.
Yeah.
I remember the build, like in season 3. I remember starting the finale and being like, they haven't revealed a single Cylon this entire time, and through all of season 2, I was always complaining because anytime like a new character popped up and they got special attention, I was like, oh, well, they're a Cylon. And that always annoyed me that it wasn't someone that we already knew. And it's like, oh, well, now it's this doctor dude, and now it's this reporter lady, and now it's this preacher guy. But then a season of no Cylon reveals, and then they just dumped 4? They dump 4 on you, don't they? And it's just like, it's devastating.
So, Larissa, I may have missed it. Did you say who you're... Oh, sorry.
I really like the whole, immediately after that reveal, where Ty... all of them really are just, desperately trying to continue doing the jobs. And, they launch straight into the Ionian Nebula battle, and Anders is losing it in the cockpit and stuff.
I love all that.
They dealt with the aftermath of that very well.
Yeah, if... He's like, I'm Saul Ty, and that's all I know. And if I die, that's the man I'll be. Like, I love that.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, well, for me, I think it would be the Chief reveal. Just because he was always one of my favorite characters. I love the everyman type guy. But I think the crowning moment for him is when he finds out that, I forget her name, that political associate of Rosalind's.
Victoria.
Yeah, when the chief finds out that she murdered what's her face?
Callie.
Callie, and just he goes berserk in the middle of that whole kind of thing they were doing.
I think I cheered when that happened.
At Dragon Con, he said that he kind of had to fight for that. That in the finale, she was going to die, but she was just going to, like, fall off the ledge and, like, break her neck or something. And he was like, Ron, you gotta let me kill her. Like, Chief has to find out and gets, like, he needs a win. He just needs something. And they let him do it.
I love how a win for the chief is murder.
Well, at that point, like, he's gone through so much.
I thought it was interesting that she, out of all of them, she was the one who kind of just owned it. She's like, all right, yeah, no, I'm a Cylon, I get it.
Well, I like that she was
definitely
chosen.
Seemed the most pragmatic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, she was, like, the wild card. We didn't know all that much about her, so it's like, how's she going to handle this? And I think that was... They really chose those final 5 pretty well, I think.
Well, do you guys know about how the whole thing with what's her name, Rekha Sharma's character? It's gone completely out of my head. The
Tori Foster.
Tori.
Yeah. That character exists because the guy that played Billy left because he wanted more money or something.
Yeah, I was just about to ask if there's any Billy love here.
Yeah, and
I love Billy.
She basically has all the stuff that was planned for Billy just transplanted onto her, which is because obviously Billy is set up to be like this super endearing, likable guy, like really heavily, and that's why he was supposed to be the one who would fully embrace being a Cylon.
I couldn't have handled Billy being a Cylon. I couldn't have handled it.
Yeah, that would have been rough.
No, I think I would have turned it in. Said nope.
But
I hate the show now.
It's good though, because then, I mean, still with Tori, you got with Ty and Tori, it's like the second in command of the government and the military.
Yeah.
Like that's a good choice. And then Chief is your everyman. Anders, I could have done without that. They could have chosen someone else for him. Ellen, I thought was Ellen, I thought was pretty interesting, just because it's like, oh, it's someone we know, and they died already, so it's someone like that you would never expect.
She was the weirdest twist.
Yeah, it was weird, but I kind of like it.
Oh yeah.
Does anyone here actually like Ellen?
I like what she causes in Ty's storyline.
Yeah.
I liked her right before she
likable.
died. Yeah,
she becomes
does.
really likable in season 4.
She's kind of the reason why they ended up in martial law in season 2.
Mm-hmm.
She's kind of pulling the strings.
I hated her for the first 2 seasons. I liked her for the second 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I hated her for pretty much all of it.
Oh, that whole season 2 arc with Ty is hard to watch, where he's like slowly betraying all the principles of Adama and just ultimately goes to martial law and all that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like everything's just falling apart. Poor guy.
So enough of all this character stuff. Can we talk about the spaceships yet?
I wanted to say I didn't want to touch on the politics behind all this too much, but Ronald Moore and what was the other guy's name?
David Icke.
They were both poli-sci majors, so it's very apparent in the show that a lot of the themes were based on politics that were happening at the time, and it's really crazy and interesting to see the show start basically with an orchestrated terrorist attack like 9/11, and then a march to war against enemies who basically can blend in with their targets indifferently, and they're indifferent to their own mortality, basically. And like you said, all about the suicide bombings and all that. So there's a lot of real life politics stuff going on there.
Well, now I got to betray Spacedock and delay the spaceship talk by
all
a bit here. But didn't they do some sort of panel at the United Nations? Does anyone know anything about what that was?
I didn't see that.
Yeah, it was they gathered a bunch of like high school students and a bunch of other people. It was moderated by Whoopi Goldberg.
Interesting.
And they they showed a bunch of clips of Battlestar Galactica, and Edward James Olmos gave a really impassioned speech about how race is bullshit and it's, we shouldn't be using it as a determinant anymore.
He's terrible at speeches. Why would they have him do that?
At the end, he finished it with "So say we all," and he got everybody screaming "So say we all."
Of course.
So.
He's good at it.
Wouldn't be Edward James Olmos without a little bit of speech making, and so say we all.
Yeah.
Almost all of his speech in the miniseries was ad-libbed. The bit at the end of...
Shut up.
There's
What?
huge chunks of that is ad-libbed. Like, I know he wasn't supposed to... He was only supposed to say, "So say we all once." The whole thing where he riles everybody up and gets them to repeat after him was completely ad-libbed. The whole thing where he says, "Are they the lucky ones?" and points at the coffins and all that. None of that was in the script. It's all in the behind-the-scenes stuff. The guy just completely created, like, huge chunks of it.
My God.
Man, they got lucky.
Well, that was like...
That's a man who knows how his character thinks.
I mean, they knew they wanted him, right? And, like, I think I remember that he said, "I'll do it as long as there are no aliens," and no... Like, he wanted to be just a completely human story. I remember he had some caveats, but... I know that they definitely wanted him.
That.
I liked when they
moment an alien-
CGI'd his face for that photograph in the miniseries to look like the Fawns.
He does look like the Fawns.
Sorry.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. All right, Spacedock.
Go for it.
What are your thoughts on the space shop or the space shops? What about the space shop, Spacedock?
Okay, so I mean, first of all, I don't want to be typecast as Mr. Spaceships here. This is a character show first.
You did that for
Spacedock.
Yeah, that's probably fair. But while it's certainly not the first to have done this, Battlestar Galactica steers wide of the whole planes in space, zero physics, space science fantasy thing, which is good because it's like, first of all, I've personally thought it looks better, like visually speaking. Like I don't feel the need to sort of sidestep reality in order to have things look like World War II dogfights and stuff. Like the way the Vipers behave with the fully 360-degree momentum arresting and all that, and the full physics model, it looks better in my opinion, and it really behaves well on screen and gives the show its own unique look. But also, I think more importantly, Battlestar Galactica knew when to not explain something. Like the FTL and the artificial gravity, they just work. Like nobody ever even goes to the engine room. Nobody ever talks about they don't spend 20 minutes giving some like technobabble speech about how it works or whatever, or riling off a bunch of like damage control numbers about tachyons or whatever. It knows when it's like crossed the line out of its grounded area, but still needs to have that for the narrative, so it just doesn't talk about it. And I can. That's like more shows need to do that, because I mean it sounds like the antithesis of what I stand for, but like by all means just completely avoid explaining something if you can't do it in a way that is consistent with the realistic tone of your show. Just let it sit there, I think.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it seems like there's a lot of shows that seem to decide you have to know that. Like for all of Star Trek's like technobabble, like sometimes you just wonder like why they're going through this, because like an inverse tachyon beam means nothing to me, so why should I be impressed that a character came up with that idea? So sidestepping that completely was a good call.
Yeah, I mean, Star Trek, I have a very difficult relationship with Star Trek, because there's some of it that I like, there's a lot of it,
we all do.
A lot of it that I don't, but it's like, it also has this sort of weird arrogance to it, where it feels like it kind of knows that there are people in its audience who think it's teaching them stuff about science, and they never step forward and say, no, listen, everything we're saying here is nonsense. Like, it just sort of lets that happen, and continues to ham up the whole explain the science scene, even though 95% of it is just words they've made up and stuff. And that's, I don't think that's something that somebody who has a large platform for entertainment should do. I think it's like a misuse of their position there.
Was there a point in the series for anyone really here where it went a little too far in one direction, where it either didn't explain something at all, or it tried to explain something and failed with regards to like the science and technology part of it?
I would say in the miniseries with Leoben on the station.
Oh yeah, where he's being affected by
radiation.
the radiation.
Yeah.
That was very Star Trek, actually. That felt Star Trek. And there's also the same thing happens later on when they find the plague that's affecting the Cylons in season 4, and they find like the probe from Kobol or whatever that's affected everyone. And as soon as that starts, you're like, oh, this is weird. This is like Star Trek or something. Like they found the weird anomalous thing that's doing strange things. Like by then you're expecting more from the show, which I think is a good thing.
I'm so forgiving with that stuff. Like I don't think I ever noticed anything.
Yeah. Did it bother anyone with Baltar's Cylon test, the blood test, and how that worked?
I mean, I could buy it. It seems like Shit, the better silent detector would be to have sex with everybody.
Right?
Didn't their like, spines start glowing?
No
They
one
did
ever
it
picked up on
first.
that.
They did it.
I guess no one ever noticed.
Good job.
Like,
Baltar never
should-
found out about that because he'd be very much behind that plan.
Yeah, and like I don't know, shouldn't we just check everyone for lights in their spine? Like I feel there's probably an easier way to go about that Cylon
Like
test.
huge design flaw right there.
That only happened in the
Well,
miniseries, or did it happen
Yeah,
again?
they
It
put an
happens
end to that
again.
super quick. Well, it happens
Boomer.
twice in the whole show.
Or
The first
I should
episode
say
and the
Athena.
fourth episode. But they really put an end
That
to
is,
that quick.
yeah, they got rid of everyone real quick. Yeah, I guess for me, the one point where it kind of lost me was when I can't remember the context, but they were plugging Boomer or Athena or one of those people into the ship, like they were hooking up cables into her blood or
Oh,
something,
yeah,
and it was
right.
somehow magically working.
Yeah, she's got
Like,
the
that
little
can
cable
happen.
in her arm.
So why didn't Baltar test for that? Look for the cable in the arm as opposed to this like fantastically complex blood plan.
Yeah.
I guess, I never really cared for the Cylons and their liquid computers. I just,
Yeah,
well, whatever. Like, I can get past it, but,
Seems a bit
don't-
messy.
right?
I think they were leaning on the whole like children of man kind of thing really hard with that. It kind of looked like a womb
Yeah.
sometimes, and it was
Yeah.
looked very raw and natural, but in a creepy
Very
way.
viscous.
I like the deliberate dissonance with the base star sets and stuff because like the central part of the base star with all the command rooms and stuff is like an Apple store, and then like the hangars and everything are just like muscle and like completely biological and like gritty, and that was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Utilitarian.
Well, yeah, the Cylons in that show are like the furthest thing you can think of from like when you think of robots, right?
Yeah.
Like you'd think it would be all bare and utilitarian and not like a weird kind of like flesh cathedral or whatever the hell they
Yeah.
were going for.
Yeah, I love when what's her name? She changes her name when she's having the baby, and the doctor's like, they could have. What does he say? They could have given you all the right parts to like make this happen. If
You'd think they would have upgraded the plumbing.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
Athena, right?
Athena. I thought that was a perfect line for him.
I love
Doc
Doc
Cottle
Cottle.
was great. Really great.
I was so sad to hear about his passing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. The same goes for Zarek.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
We
Yeah.
ran into him at DragonCon, and he was super nice. Like, just in
Yeah.
a Starbucks. And was, like, super happy to just talk about Battlestar with us in line.
Yeah, we were.
Nicest
You're
guy.
in a Starbucks.
Yeah, right?
Is anyone going to make a joke out about that? I'm not clever enough to think of one.
Well, they actually resisted the temptation to do a Starbucks coffee joke until the final episode of the whole show. There's a "Did you guys stop for coffee?" joke from Starbucks in the very last episode.
Something I found on the internet today, which kind of, I don't know if anybody else knew about this, but the original Battlestar Galactica creator, Glenn Larson, is actually a member of the Church of Latter-day Saints, and there's a lot of elements that made its way into the remake that are actually pulled from the Church of Latter-day Saints, which surprised me quite a lot. Like the Quorum of 12, that's a Mormon thing, and a bunch of other elements were also like that. So I'm wondering how much of Moore's and Ike's leanings towards the religious kind of stemmed from that a little bit. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
That doesn't really surprise me.
Yeah, I didn't know any of that, but they definitely really lean into religion towards season 3 and 4.
How did you folks, Mollie, let's start with you. Like, did the religion, like, I know, like, the religion is a huge part of the show, but it's also kind of where it seemed to lose me at times, because, like, faith is sometimes just, like, a bad explanation for certain things. So, I mean, especially with, we got the Baltar and, what's-her-face, number 9? What's her number?
Number 3, Deanna.
Deanna.
No, I was thinking the two
6.
invisible angels.
6.
Oh,
6.
6, yeah.
What the angel people, what did you think of them?
I mean, yeah, the religious stuff got a little out of hand. Definitely the Baltar stuff and his cult of women bothered me a little bit. But yeah, things just got a little bit carried away, and like Rosalind's drug-induced visions with her Kamala extract and all that kind of stuff. And
I was totally on board.
I mean, I loved all that
Rosalind stuff
stuff, but it was kind of all being thrown at you at once at one point in the show, which kind of lost me a little bit.
because there's a part. Can someone explain this to me? There's a part where they're on Kobol, I want to say, and they go into that room, and then they have either a collective vision or something where they're all in a grassy field, and they're standing on Earth looking at the star signs.
Yeah.
And then it just cuts to them walking back out in the field again, and it's like, wait, how did they leave the first field? Like,
it's just a magic cave.
The Kobol civilization was supposed to be like super advanced, right? Because you got the whole like cyclical time thing going on. So they've obviously everybody developed at least to the point to create AI, which then destroyed them. So while it looks like sort of ancient Greek mythology with all statues and stuff, the civilization that was on Kobol was like super advanced as well. So
you think they walked into a holodeck?
Well,
to
any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, as they say.
Damn, Daniel.
Alrighty, yeah. I guess for me, I was looking forward to the explanation of why only Gaius could see what's her face, number 6, and the explanation given that they were angels working for God. It didn't really jive with me.
What I think is funny is that they said that in the first episode. They just said it, and you're like, nah, it's got to be something else. But
yeah, I didn't believe it. I thought they were lying.
I loved finding out when 6 had an imaginary Baltar in her head.
Yeah.
I was like, oh.
That
because at first you're like, oh my god, he's a Cylon. And then you're like, oh no,
Nope.
he's another head person.
Yeah.
I was raised to be very religious, and that stuff, like, didn't bother me at all. So I was able to just, like, get where they were coming from, at least. Like, I'm not religious anymore, but I can just see what they're saying, and, like, it just didn't bug me nearly as much as it did some of my friends that I've tried to get into the show.
Yeah, normally it would bug me, but there was so much other stuff happening that was entertaining enough that it didn't stop me from finishing the show.
I guess I heard enough stories growing up where the explanation was angels did it that I'm like, oh yeah, it's just another one of those.
You're prepared for
right.
it. Anticipating.
Like, yeah, I've heard that story.
Right, well,
okay.
I think we're heading up on the end here. So I want to ask each of you, what did you think of the ending? Because a lot of varying opinions on that one. So Alex, let's start with you. How did the ending land with you?
A mixed bag. I mean, like I said, the explanations I think leave a little to be desired, even though I was like, okay, I see what they're doing. And I do love the moment when Gaius and 6 each see the angels together and they're like, you see them too? And the thing, like, even though there's some weird stuff that I don't really like the fact that they convince the Cylons to, like, let's work together, we'll give you resurrection, and then we'll leave, and you just leave us alone. And then, like, everything quickly just goes to shit again, and they shoot each other, and I'm like, okay, well, what was that all about? Like, everyone learned a lesson and then shot each other, and I didn't really like that. But as far as the characters go, I thought that it all ended very well, and, like, whenever I think of the finale, I think of, like, the Galactica sailing off into literally the sun and just some of those amazing moments. I think of it for what I liked and not so much what I didn't.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fair. Larissa, how did it go with you?
I mean, again, it's been a long time since I've watched it, but I remember at the time thinking I felt satisfied. Like, I felt closure. I felt like, yes, the show has reached its end. Everything that I wanted answered is answered. There's some interesting questions that I don't need answered. And I liked it. I didn't realize that so many people didn't until years later. So I like it.
Weren't as connected to the internet.
I think I'm just realizing now that I have not watched the finale without crying.
Like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Every time, like, Bill has to carry Rosalind to the Raptor, and then, like, Lee comes up to say, he just says, like, Dad, and I start crying. And he's like, I gotta go, son. And you're like, oh, it's too much. that part always gets me.
In the final episode.
Yeah.
Mollie, can you first verify this, and second, what did you think of the finale?
Yes, I can verify both of us are crying like babies throughout the show.
I run to the bathroom every time. I'm like, don't look at me.
I gotta go.
I like the ending. Part of me is like, I'm not really sure how else they could have ended it. But I do like the fact that they they sent away all the technology, so it's like, okay, well, no one can question, well, what have they, like, showed all the people that they found there, this, like, random technology? No, they sent all that stuff away. And I really like the time jump forward at the very end, where it's kind of showing you all of the robots and technology that we have going on in today's society, and it's kind of like their way of saying, keep an eye on those robots that you're making. They could get
Remember
out of
what we just
hand.
said? It's all happened before.
Yeah.
In case you're not tired of that saying.
Yeah, it leaves you questioning, is history going to continue to repeat itself? Well, we'll see.
All right, so Spacedock, how'd the final go for you?
As I will say that while I'm not as irritated by it as a lot of people, I don't completely buy the whole ditch all the technology thing. Like, I can understand why the main characters of the show would want to do that, because they have, like, all the context and information about the cyclical time thing and creating Cylons and all that. But, like, it does seem like there would be mass riots immediately if you tried to do anything like that. But
at least one guy has to be like, give me back my shower, I need my shower.
It's got to happen, right? But yeah, the whole finale has some incredibly hard-hitting emotional moments. Like, I can't get through the she's broke her back, she'll never jump again scene with the whole, like, and the use of sound when it jumps through, and they do this like awful like whale noises as it's just ripping itself apart from the.
I love that you're broken up about a spaceship. It's perfect.
But it's great stuff, and also even more so, I think there's that one line, and I think it's Baltar's last line in the whole show, where Caprica 6 is looking around on Earth, and she's like, oh, we'll have to set up some farms and stuff, and Baltar's just in this like 100-meter stare, and he just says, I know about farming. And it's like, it's so perfect, because he's like
he used to be a
come
farmer.
Full circle. He's like spent his entire life trying to hide his origins from this agriculture planet, and it just comes all the way around, and he ends up farming in Tanzania or something. It's really good.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great moment, because for me, like, endings are hard, so I can give a lot of leeway to shows that have to come up with some grand kind of finale type thing. But I was watching that show for the characters, and every character, or at least most of them, had an ending that I think was earned and didn't feel cheap. So yeah, the ending was good for me. And speaking of endings, I think we've reached the end of this episode of The Neutral Zone. So thank you, everyone, for listening, and thanks to my guests for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so please check out all our respective YouTube channels. You'll find the descriptions in the description, or you'll find the links in the description, let's say that. And until next time, this has been The Neutral Zone. Thanks again.